and we got 10, 11,000 comments and 7,500 leads, and we're like, okay, this is something. Was that would be equivalent to around 30 to 50K in marketing spend.
GTMAI podcast with Jonathan Austin, Coach K, where you get the latest with AI and GTM today. GTM.
Morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. It is I, Jonathan Carford, aka Coach K, and this is the GTMAI podcast. I am thrilled, excited, ecstatic, honored. Gotta have something else. I'll think of something else. I'm just wondrous. There he is. I'm wondrous to be able to have my man Harald on with me. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So you are the founder and CEO of Bureau Ventures. You and I connected because I've been following your stuff for a while, and I feel like I got involved with the growth garden, which is a lot of fun. And obviously, I've been testing some of the back end stuff. I've seen you done on the front end of LinkedIn, and I've just loved to have you on. I'm really excited for today's convo. So, before we dive in, though, as you said before the call, I want to hear a little bit more about your origin story. So,
origin story. You're using that term, then.
I am the origin. I've never used it before. We're using it today. So, the non-LinkedIn, non-resume version of Harald. Like, what's your journey? What's the origin story to make you like the superpower you are now? Tell me the whole thing.
So, I'm turning 30. There's a bit of context, but my story in terms of why I ended up here where I am was actually when I was 11. That's where basically things took a bit of a turn. Because I was the typical gamer boy. So I came back home from school. I just sat down by the computer. I would play video games until dinner, just a small break and then dinner and then go back again. And it got so bad that my dad actually gave me an ultimatum. Like, either you have to do something productive on your laptop where you can actually show something for it, or we're going to confiscate it. And I'm like, my entire life was in video games. I never really had a lot of, let's say, in-person friends. I grew up to bullying, stuff like that. But the simpler version of the story is I was playing in a video game called Fliff, which basically is similar to World of Warcraft. And what I taught myself over the summer, which was probably a horrible timing for my parents, was I taught myself how to program and create websites and create my own server of that video games that I host on a backup laptop in my closet.
Oh, that's cool.
And I was like, look, I've done something productive.
Look, I did something productive.
I've done something productive. I sat inside the entire summer to learn that. But nonetheless, I did that. And it grew to, I think when I was 11, 300 people played every single day. And I had a management team of 12.
Wow, that's cool.
So a bit of an interesting thing there. But from there, gaming wasn't fun anymore when I was 16. I think a friend introduced me to Bitcoin. This was in 2011. So
tell me about a bajillion of them back then, right?
No, I think I did some mining. That hard drive is probably on some garbage dump somewhere. Right. But I asked my dad, hey, could I invest like $100 of my savings into this? And he just got burnt in the stock market. So he said no. And I think the equivalent to that today would be about like $10 million or something like that.
Did you come back and apologize? Go on, son. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So I'm holding that to him, to put it that way.
There you go.
But then I had to do something else, and like business was the thing. And then from there in 2011 till now, so when I was 16, it's been everything and anything within digital marketing, go-to-market, digital automation, how business models work, and the full suite. So if there's something within, let's say, the umbrella of marketing online, I've probably been involved with it, done it, tested it, tried it, stopped doing it, or had success with it. So that's, let's say, the part of the story that you don't get on LinkedIn about who I am and how I ended up being here where I am today.
Yeah, what I appreciate is just and this is just my impression of you, so I know you and I are just getting to know each other, but you're super intelligent, but also very humble, which is a good combo between the two. And you think out of the box, and I love out of the box thinkers. So I want to really tap into that today. One of which is, I'm assuming because you did digital marketing, you've done things like SEO and the classic demand gen type stuff. And what you and your team are doing is interesting because you're obviously leveraging LinkedIn, but you're doing it in a little bit different fashion. And the thing that I love and appreciate is that before you and I ever got involved, and I started talking to you, even before I even interacted with your content, I was on this mode of doing, like, I have the kind of classic, I shouldn't say classic because I'm not a classic marketer, but I'm leading marketing now for Momentum. And I have my MBA in marketing, but my background is in sales and enablement. It's not necessarily in marketing. Even though I love marketing, I love branding, but it's just not the same. As I've been researching and reading a lot of, I'm so intrigued about what works as far as a marketing demand gen perspective. And this concept, which I never had a name for, which I saw when you gave me the resource, which is the whole value-based marketing thing. I'd love to have you walk through those three levels you have in that doc about saying there's this, and then there's the regular pain, and then there's the value-based stuff. So walk me through those three things and how you think about it.
I write so much and I come up with so many, let's say, different models.
Yeah.
So it's a bit hard to keep track sometimes. Like you're addressing this
I know.
one thing.
I'm calling out like, well, I can't remember what document that is.
Yeah. What specific piece is it talking about?
Just go more broadly. Like, how have you shifted the last year to talk about like how do you provide value to the market space to create demand gen versus just saying the normal marketing play? Like, what's your methodology?
Yeah, this is so basically value first versus the pitch first. Or okay, this is what we're doing. This is the features and so on. So it isn't been a thing that I've actually changed the past year. It's actually been the go-to, let's say, methodology and approach of doing marketing since I think 2016, 2015, something like that. And also a bit of context. Previously, I've been a heavy, let's say, direct response paid ads kind of guy, where doing something organic and let's say, how explicit can we go in terms of, let's say, metaphors?
Be explicit as you want to be.
Okay, so I heard this saying, I think it was like 7 or 8 years ago, where, and it basically just become a confirmation bias for myself at that point. And that said, it compared paid marketing to organic marketing. And the paid marketing is like you have a machine. It's a well-oiled machine. You put $1 in, you get $2 out. Of course, you would put everything you can in because you multiply it. But then organic, you don't have any machine because you are the product, where you have to keep on going to get something out the other end. And the metaphor and the analogy that was put forth when I heard this was being reliant on organic marketing is being a bit like a stripper. You need to be up there, shake your butt to get the money flowing and tossed at you. But as soon as you stop shaking, you're not going to get the money. So due to that, the entire thing that I was looking at is okay, paid ads, because I have control. I can look into the metrics. I can look at the data, which again played to my analytical side and personality. But then it was also content first in terms of value, where you had a typical lead magnet, you had something valuable, something addressing the key problems an audience had, and then you use that to funnel in people that are interested at either a conscious or subconscious level. Because you won't click on an ad saying, "Hey, how can you get more leads?" unless you want more leads. However, it was only last year when we looked at okay, how can we really, let's say, crack LinkedIn? Because years back, I think I had a 365-day streak in terms of creating content every single day on LinkedIn, but it never took off. And then I had a complete pause because I was a bit sick and tired of it. But last year, I saw a trend, and that was on X or previously Twitter, you had these, let's say, engagement bait type of content. Okay, I'm crazy for sharing this. I've packaged and created this thing, comment in the comments and like and retweet. I'm going to send it to you on DM. And I hadn't started to see that happen on LinkedIn, but it started to pop up here and there. I was like, I think it was like 8, 9 p.m. in the evenings one day in November last year. And I was like, hey, what if I just create a post like that? I'll create a post before, but not that type of angle to it. And it really hit off. And we continued doing that until or throughout December, where we basically created what we call the Christmas or an Advents calendar, where we give away one, let's say, tactic, strategy, methodology, tool, template from the 1st to the 24th. And we got 10, 11,000 comments and 7,500 leads. And we're like, okay, this is something. Because that would be equivalent to around 30 to 50K in marketing spend if you're doing really good paid ads to opt in and then basically come out on the back end. And that basically changed how we still saw it in terms of, okay, can we, when it comes to marketing, if you pitch your product immediately, you only have one chance of pitching someone. If you give them value that address a pain point that your product ultimately solves, then you have multiple because you get them to opt in. You invite them into your ecosystem, into your email system, into your newsletter, into your targeting. So you have more control where you can basically play to the paid, owned, and earned media that are in marketing in terms of the 3, let's say, categories where you basically build your own digital real estate. So it isn't that the methodology and approach is new. It's more that the platform is new for us specifically in terms of using LinkedIn. But it's completely changed how we see just organic now. It's no longer the stripper that's up there and shaking her butt. It's more that you actually create these, let's say, digital assets that live their own life. And As we talked about when you joined Growth Garden as well, that you had this fear of missing out. Like, what is Harold posting next? And that's ultimately what we want in marketing, right? Where our target audience
Yeah.
comes to us. What has he posted? And I'm not sure if that answered your question though,
No, it,
or if
it
I
totally does.
went a bit on a tangent.
No, I love it. So it's reason why I bring this up because like me in the marketing space, and I think a lot about obviously from the GTMI Academy and from Momenti, their organization of my own. I watch different companies and what they do and what they give to the market space. And there's some people, or I should say, some companies who, like for example, Gong has done an amazing job over the years of giving unique, modable, I don't know if that's the right word, but unique to them data that says if you
Mm,
say hello 5 times in the first call, then your win rate goes down, like whatever the thing is that become a unique value point so that people like myself who are in the space find value in just what they give out to the market space. That
mm,
concept, Zapier did the same thing. Like Zapier had a ton of stuff out there. I keep seeing this concept pop up here and there, but I've never seen it really operationalized in a way that could become like an engine, or at least I haven't seen the back end of it. And then walking into what you guys have and starting to see the vision of it, I'm like, oh, this is how you do it. And now it's
yeah.
becoming a little bit more concrete of making an actual plan and a plan of attack of like, how to do this in scale, which I think is what is really cool about your guys' process is that you're helping to not only automate it, but then like to me, like one of the first questions I asked you was like, how do I think about lead gen stuff? Like I truly want to give valuable content to the market space, but it's such a black box of what the hell is that? What's
Yeah.
valuable to the market
Yeah.
space? So like that is the part that I've loved. And this is where I want to dive into your tech a little bit, but just your philosophy in general. Then we'll get into the technology side of it. But
Yeah.
when you're talking to people and they're saying whatever they're selling, service or a tech or software or whatever product, how do you get them to start thinking about being okay with giving away something that is actually valuable that they could charge for, but they're not, so you can get more leads? What's the shift you have to help them transition to?
So obviously it's a mindset thing. And I remember when I started my business like 14 years ago, and it was like I had a first mentor that said mindset is everything. And it to some degree is. But the very simple thing is that we believe that, let's say, information is power, or
Mm-hmm.
content is power, or valuable. But I would reckon that it's not. Because one, now things have changed with ChatGPT. Like previously you had to read the book to, let's say, consume, let's say, the knowledge. Now you no longer even need to consume it. You can just ask for it. You can skip the consumption part. So let's say the value in information has changed from information being accessible to information being implemented. So implementation is
Yeah.
what's valuable. And like you can also look at it this way, where you could read all the books that a doctor goes through during their studies, but you wouldn't become a doctor at the end because you need to have the practice. And that's ultimately the thing. Like I could give you the complete blueprint for how to do something, but again, being a bit, let's say, a bit cocky to it, good luck having the same performance that I would have having done this more than a decade. So I think
Right.
that is ultimately the bottom line in terms of the mindset switch. Even if you give it away for free, like most of it won't mean that someone will see the transformation because one, people procrastinate. And that is something I see all the time. Like I can tell you, you need to do these 10 things and it will take you, let's say, a week max to do it. And people sit 2, 3, 4 months down the line and haven't done one or two. So we think that we need to have everything perfect to even get started, but that's not the same. That's not correct. So that's one. The other one is I think a lot of people are concerned about if you work in, let's say, a larger company, it's politics all over. If I were to drag in
Right.
all of these, let's say, initiatives in terms of marketing, I bring in 4 or 5 people to create the content, some videographers, some color clippers, and all these different people and
Mm-hmm.
professions, and something doesn't work, like, how is that going to impact me? Like, how is that going to help me? It's probably not because I wasted a lot of internal resources. So
Right.
there's also that part to it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you have the cognitive biases that we people and human beings are driven by. And one of them is reciprocity bias, which is if I do you a favor, you're more inclined to do me a favor in the next turnover. And just a very simple thing.
Robert Cialdini's influence
Yeah,
model. Yeah. Yep.
yeah. And way before that as well, because a lot of the approach that I've done to marketing is the typical direct response. I tell you to do something, or I run a certain campaign where I actually ask you to do a specific thing, but we also need to think about friction, like from physics. Like the more friction there is in
Right.
doing the next step, the less likely people are to do it. So how can we lessen the friction by having people go to the next step? And if I can give you something for free, again, you won't have any friction. Like, oh, this is a good deal. Maybe I just put in my email and I get this in return. So how much is the value put on something in your mind compared to what you have to give away? And if that equation favors the thing that is being given away, or what is basically presented is higher than what needs to be invested, then basically it's a no-brainer. So everything goes to that in terms of, if I give you something, you're more inclined to do something for me in my next ask. If I keep giving something, and this is something, for example, Gary Vaynerchuk had this years back, which was jab and then hook, or jab, ask, something like that.
Yeah.
And if you give something away, 95% won't even try. 50% won't likely even consume it, but they still trigger that reciprocity bias.
Right.
And if you, through content and giving value, can present your authority and credibility and your skill set, and people actually need it, it's way easier for you to pitch them because they already know your skill set, they already have the trust in you, and you already have the authority. So there's plenty of things to tap in, but ultimately it's that mindset shift that needs to happen for someone to even be willing to test running content first or value first.
Yeah, this whole concept is so intriguing to me because it's made me rethink from a lot of different ways of, even from a demand gen perspective. It's like the classic journey of most people do is like you have whatever paid ad and whatever LinkedIn, Google, whatever. And then that LinkedIn ad obviously wants to push them to get a demo. Like, it's just like, here, ad demo. That's usually what most people do, right? But then the click-through rates and the delivery rates, like all this stuff just goes down because most people who are actually in the buying cycle may or may not be reached by that ad. But you think on the other side of saying, hey, I'm going to give you this thing if you opt in, that's a different conversation. And that thing can't just be a fluffy blog. It needs to be an actual legitimate something that they go, that's cool. Something that you would have paid, even if it's $50 for, if it's for free. I think that's been the shift for me, is just thinking like, what is something I could create that I would actually could charge money for, but I won't, and use it as lead gen thing? And then how could I do that over and over again? So that one of my mentors, when I worked with 10 years ago, I was a life coach, was always about, you said, her rule was 3 gives, 1 ask. So give, ask, give, ask. It was the same thing. And it's kind of like that same concept of thinking like, what's the give? What's the value I can create 3 times? And ask for a demo, because then more than likely, if they are in the buying process, because like you said, I've built the trust, I've given them the reciprocity, and because I've given them actually good content. And then I could say, hey, come talk to us about a demo. More than likely, they're going to be warmed up to the point of doing that versus me just trying to get an ad and get them to a demo. You know what I mean? It's just a shift in how to think, which I like. It's a good shift. Now I'm going to ask you the weird question, which is, how then are you using AI in this whole thing? And I'd really love to have you dive into your tech side, but not just that, but like the whole process. Tell me how you think about AI, this whole thing.
So if we were to go really macro first,
macro first.
I think people can't fathom how the world is going to look like in 2030. I think that's one. I think the way we do work is going to be completely different. I think software we're going to interface with is going to be completely changed. So I think everything is going to change. And I remember when I wrote my bachelor's thesis, one of the things that I wrote about was actually AI. How is, as a business development, going to change, and how is AI going to affect it? And the previous, let's say, consensus was that like you can divide all things that we do into 3 categories. You have the human-to-human service types of, let's say, work, like the waiter, the nurse, those that actually you need to have that human connection, that because that's ultimately what you pay for. You have the repetitive standardized works where like accounting, manufacturing, all of these different things. And then you have strategic and creative work, which is the latter. Everyone thought that it was the repetitive tasks that were going to be completely disrupted from the get-go, or the first. What we saw was that it was the creative and strategic part. Videos, writing, audio, images, those things. And what we see now is that everything is changing. And how I like to look at it is everything we do is a set of input, process, output. So to give you an example, every certain service, consultancy, product that there is, it gets an input that is from the client, typically the business information, this is our product, this is our marketing, this is who we're trying to reach. I have a certain process for how I process that, how I set up marketing campaigns, how I set up content, all of these different things. And then through that, we get an output. And that is a marketing campaign, it's a setup, it's an automation, it's an AI. So this idea of input, process, output, or input, mechanism, output is something that exists in everything. The thing that I see AI doing now is that the barrier of know-how, the barrier of entry, the barrier of understanding how the input mechanism or input process output works is completely changed, because previously there was a wall, because you had to have certain knowledge, you had to have certain connections, you had to have certain, let's say, resources available to be able to understand how something worked. You don't need to do that anymore. Like you could say, I want to achieve this output or this result. You type that into AI and AI reverse engineers everything. And that is how I'm looking at it, which is every company on planet Earth, or if let's say if we take Fortune 1000, Fortune 500 companies that has a headcount of 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people. If you look at all of those 50,000 or 10,000 individuals and people that work in a company, everyone executes a certain function. So now we're going, let's say, really deep into it. So I'm going to try to make it, let's say, as digestible as possible, and the train of thought is clear. So every one of those employees execute a certain function. You can then take that employee and say, okay, they have a certain, let's say, input that they get. They process that input in a certain way, and that's their job, and that's their work that they do, and they output a certain thing. You could then look at that multiplied by 50,000. Imagine that being emulated by AI. AI will be able to understand the ins and outs of all inputs, processes, and outputs, and the correlation of everything in a company probably within the next 5 years.
Yeah.
How is that going to change business? That's the macro that I'm contemplating absolutely every single day and every breathing minute of the day. And I see a future where it's going to be more AI to AI interaction than human to human and human to AI. It's going to be an AI that sells another AI on the services of your company, instead of a human selling to a human, or humans even selling to AI. And you won't, if you were to sell to an AI, you won't know the difference. So what do we need to do when it comes to looking at businesses, growing businesses, go to market, and all these different things? What's going to be the moat? That's ultimately, let's say, the holy grail. Like, what's going to be the moat that allows you to have a competitive advantage in the marketplace when this, let's say, future happens? And that goes down ultimately to product is no longer going to be the moat, because you can spin up a tech product in a day with Cursor in the current version. Imagine what that's going to look like in 5 years. Completely different. It's one click, you have it. And that is also some of the things that we're working on. So product isn't going to be the thing. Is it then positioning? Maybe. But if you look at what's interesting is that you have paid, owned, and earned media. It's basically a term within two traditional terms within marketing. Paid is what you have to pay to get access to it in terms of reaching the audience. Owned is what you basically have access to. A simple case is your email list, newsletter, because you own it. No one can take that list away from you. And then you have earned, which is, let's say, your followers on LinkedIn or Twitter or YouTube or you name it. You're at the mercy of the platform to not get banned. Paid will never be a moat, because it's going to be a game of diminishing returns, because the more you spend, the less you get back in terms of return on ad spend. Earned, you're always at the mercy of a platform. Regulation changes, for example. Like, there's been talks about banning TikTok in the States. That was averted by Trump when he got elected. Like, good luck if your business was reliant on TikTok. The only way you can go at is earned. Or owned, I'm sorry. So how can you build owned media? Because that's the one thing that you can own that no one else controls. So I see that what's likely going to happen is that we're going to see a more micro communities that individual companies actually own the ecosystem of. And what they do is that they use paid and earned media to get as much equity over into owned. And when it comes to then using AI for all of this, I think content is one mode currently, because again, how do you get people to change into giving first? So if you give first, you have an advantage in terms of time. It's going to be we are living on borrowed time, because it's going to be a day where someone churns out an AI model that can create 100 million pieces of content that builds that mode for them in the span of a day. So we have to look at different ways of playing the game and what we have today, because you can't compete with a million AI agents that works doing outbound on LinkedIn, sending cold emails. There needs to be something else. And I think that's the thing the entire marketing game or marketing industry is trying to find. And it's a hard one, because I don't know the answer either. But these are the things that, let's say, I'm thinking about in the macro, but also a bit into the micro.
Yeah, I've also think about this all the time. I'm like, what's this going to be like in the future with this kind
Yeah.
of stuff? One of my kind of going down the same road of what you were saying, my personal opinion is that the moat is the human, but it's more about
Mm.
like the stuff that you guys are able to pump out from Bureau Ventures and Growth Garden is unique to you. So that can't be duplicated by an AI. That makes sense? It's because it's in your brain.
Yeah.
I mean, the strategy might be and some of the content might be, but when you come up with some original thought, that's not something that AI can create, which is
Yeah.
crazy. It can create other things, but that to me is where I think we need to double down on. It's like, what is the thing that I can amplify with my brain and use AI to do that with? And then all the other interactions is automated. But the original, the foundation comes from the human, which is a fascinating point of view. So tell me more about,
Yeah.
let's dig into your tech a little bit more. Like, for example,
Mhm.
my question to you was like, how the heck do I think about lead magnets? You say, hey, I got a tool for that. And so you guys have created this tech where you
Mhm.
have, I train on my brand, on my ICP, on my messaging, and it pumps out. In fact, I just got the latest thing. I got to go into and read it. But it pumps out saying, based on what we've seen work in the marketplace, so we know what value is and what performs well, here's
Mhm.
some ideas for you. And then pops it out.
Yeah.
I know that's one use case, but I know you're also thinking about other ways to use AI to amplify what you're doing. So if you
Yeah.
can dig into that specific tech and then what else you're thinking about as far as AI.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of ideas in terms of what to look at for AI in terms of content. Ultimately, at the end of the day, like you have three parts to marketing, right? You have top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. Top of funnel is basically how can I get eyeballs and introduce people to the ecosystem that I have. Middle of funnel, how can I nurture them? And bottom of funnel, how can I convert them? Basically, it's a simplified terms for it.
Yeah.
What we see, and I think I can go into basically what we have now and what we're looking at in terms of marketing and AI. So currently, if we were to look at marketing strategies, every company needs clients, right? Depending on if you're in B2B, if you're B2C, like it depends a bit about how the sales process will look like. But let's take the
Yeah.
case of you need to have a meeting. How do you get a meeting? You need to have leads that are reach a certain, let's say, interest level or nurturing threshold that they're interested in a call. But how do you get those leads? You can run cold emails, you can run ads, you can post content organically, you can use SEO, you can do a lot of different things, but it's limited to some degree. You can post stuff, you can hunt people, you can send outbound and inbound. So the first thing that we were looking at was what's the easiest thing where, as I said, the time commitment to set it up, but also time commitment to create it is the lowest. One simple one is outbound. Like you can reach out to cold email, but again, that's starting to be not the best play because you require such, let's say, sophisticated setup to be able to do anything. But another one is outbound on LinkedIn. But how do you do outbound on LinkedIn? Connecting with people, sending messages, doing that automated. Most people pitch. Horrible way of doing it. Like never pitch, don't do it, don't talk about your service, just stop. Either ask a genuine question because B2B sales is relationships, or lead with value. So have a guide, have some asset, have a report about their industry that is relevant to the ones that you're sending it to. Hey, Tom, I see you're your CEO in HR and the HR industry. There are coming some regulations in your country. We created a report about
Yeah.
it. I hope you find it useful. So we never do outbound in a way where we actually pitch. So how can we then use AI to facilitate for either asking genuine questions, which again tailors to the B2B nature of things in terms of relationships, or value first? And if we look at value first, like ultimate, and this is what you were mentioning in terms of the growth guide and the tech that we have there, which is if I can understand your business, what you do, the service that you have, and the audience you have, potentially the branding guidelines, stuff like that,
Yeah.
I can probably reverse engineer what problems you're basically solving. I can probably reverse engineer the outputs that you can generate based on the service that you provide, again, using AI. So you can extrapolate in either direction. Like this is the
Right.
audience, this is what we solve. What are the root causes and issues that the audience has?
And it should go
Okay,
backwards and then go forward. Right.
yes. And what
Yeah.
is the, let's say, the 100 top and biggest, let's say, outcomes that they can have, big and small, macro, micro. And based on that, I can basically then say, okay, if I can then take my methodology, outline certain parts of it to be specific to these 10 biggest problems or five biggest problems or three
Yeah.
key problems, I can basically create some content for that. So I can then lead with content. And the benefit of that is that I don't need to be involved in that creative process at all. It's basically prompt training with ChatGPT or any sort of LLM.
Right.
Now the question is, how do I use this and where can this go? And that's where this can go is what's being interesting. So if I have that content, I can post that on LinkedIn as an ad, or not as an ad, as organic content. I can use different certain tools to then basically automate engagement and sending of said resource. So if you comment, you can get it on DM, you can automate that with, for example, lead chart. If I have content, and let's say I create 10 of these, let's say content pieces and resources that are valuable, it could be a template, it could be a swipe file, it could be a guide, it could be a tutorial, it could be a methodology breakdown, it could be a white paper, it could be a report. It doesn't really matter. It could be different formats. But if I post 10 and one really works, one, I hadn't created the content. I didn't know why that was the thing, but it was reverse engineered from the product, the audience, and the match of those. If I have 2 out of 10 that really works, it's way more, I have way more confidence in running ads on those 2 than trying to start an ad on something random because I have a hypothesis, because this, I believe the audience is interested in this. So just with this, AI has been able to give you certain experiments so that you, instead of wasting money on ads, you can actually use content first and then run ads on what actually works. So that's the first piece. The next is basically, how do we nurture those leads that you basically get, either through ads, inbound, outbound, doesn't really matter. And that is, again, content. So what are the problems people have? And this is where the, let's say, the nurturing and engagement and conversion processes start. Because you have that audience that aren't aware of the problem that they have. It's a subconscious thing. Then again, they click on something because it's a subconscious interest. They become aware of it and conscious. So they're aware of the problem, but they're not aware of solutions. So how can we communicate in the content that we have things that moves them towards that the solution and methodology and approach and the way of doing things in terms of how we do it is one of the ways to solve the problem. And the last is, how can we address that, making our product and us as players, as a company, be the one that are the relevant choice when they're actually willing to pull the trigger. So all of that, again, AI. It can do everything. It breaks down the audience, breaks down the consciousness levels. Basically, what do we need to get someone from one point to the next? And the interesting thing, if we look at, and this is a bit, let's say, discussed with, let's say, positive and negative, let's say, light, how Trump came to power in the first place back in 2016, the Cambridge Analytica scandal. What they did is that they basically used AI to break down the psychological, let's say, nurturing process of an audience based on if they were blue or red. And what did it take to bring someone from the blue to the red, and also vice versa? Because if I can define that, okay, you are at this certain level in terms of your subconscious to conscious awareness level of a problem and a solution, I can figure out what's the one thing that I need to do for you to move from a negative 10 to a negative 9, which brings you closer to where I want you to do. AI can break this down for you. So again, ideation for content. Then the next step is, how can we automate different stuff? So let's say that you're using LinkedIn for outbound and inbound. One thing that we've been playing around with is, you have the entire term of AI SDRs. AI software is that basically work as SDRs automatically. Funny thing now is that the user base of these tools are basically churning because it doesn't work. But then again, how can we make them, let's say, work in our favor depending on what context they're in and what the context of the leads are in terms of how they enter, let's say, the ecosystem of your company. So if someone comes inbound, what we're looking at is, and thinking about, which is the very, let's say, simple next step, is if someone, let's say, comes in from a certain lead magnet, so you have a post, they opt in to receive a guide, how can you give an AI that context about them? So basically use API endpoints to scrape the profile, the company, website, what they do, reverse engineer everything, again, with AI, to extrapolate based on, okay, what are the company about? What are the services? What are the pain points? What are the outcomes and results? So then you can have a completely different profile of every single lead that comes in. And then you feed that into AI to automatically have a conversation back and forth. Next up is, can you, let's say, get distribution to be one potential mode? And one thing that we're looking at is, I can, based on my company, just my website, add it into an engine that we have in backend. And no one has access to this. It's probably never going to be. But just to give you the idea, and that is, I can, based on my website URL, create a fully autonomous newsletter based on our business and our audience and what we do. And how it works, and I can talk about the, let's say, the rough edges on it, is that you can scrape the website of a company. You can use AI prompting to reverse engineer backwards and forwards, as we discussed. You can then, based on that, figure out who the target audience is, You can use different tools to scrape them, find certain companies in certain industries that matches the ICP and the criteria that you have, clean all of those automatically with API endpoints and AI, and then reach out on cold email or ads or retargeting or whatever it is, and invite people to the newsletter, which is 100% automated by AI. You can also take a look at how can we use AI for client success. And a good example is if we take Growth Garden, for example, it's I have calls externally, internally, I share my knowledge like this, for example. If I take everything that I've ever said about any methodology, any approach, any system, internal onboarding, external onboarding, tutorials, guides, resources, and put that into knowledge base, and I train an AI on it, I basically create a duplicate of myself based on the content that I put down. Again, the likelihood of the content being different from what's already fed into ChatGPT is very low, but then again, there's some uniqueness to it. And the uniqueness is flavor in terms of how it's presented, how it's packaged. So how can we then use that AI to automate client success? And one thing that I built, I think this was back in 2019, was what we call the client happiness index, which was a bit similar to you have the red and then the blue in terms of what needs to be done to transition someone. And the simplification of it is you have a score from 1 to 10 in terms of happiness and result the client has. What are the things that needs to happen to bring them from a 1 to a 2 in terms of happiness and a 1 to a 2 in terms of result? And what you then can do is that you can build an autonomous, let's say, client success system where you can survey the client based on their experience to get the subjective, let's say, satisfaction score every single week or every single month. You basically a bit like an NPS survey. You can then also, based on API and the systems that have set up where you have the KPIs, like if you're running ads, if you're landing pages, you're running some sort of, you can tap into the metrics. If you can feed both of those, you can automatically pinpoint where someone are at the 1 to 10 scale. But you already have defined what you need to do to get to +1. Now with AI agents, you can actually execute those activities autonomously. So you can basically have a system that is fed on all of your proprietary data, your systems, your processes, your methodologies, your know-how, all of that. You can survey the audience automatically, and you can have a system that basically brings people up in terms of result and up in terms of satisfaction. Because one thing in B2B that I've experienced is that it's not necessarily the result that you give someone that makes them stick around. It's the feeling that they get. And if they're happy with you, they really feel, as a seen, heard, prioritized, all of these different things. If you have a 5 times ROI versus a 3.5 times ROI on investment, it might not really matter. So how can that type of system be something that is implemented to, let's say, use AI in operations? And there's plenty of other use cases as well, but those are some of them, let's say, very close to where we're at right now. Some things that we have, some things that we only have as concepts, and some things that we have in the roadmap and plan. But the idea is that type in your company details, like just a URL, and at some point you will be, with AI, have the system that can do everything: outbound, inbound, content, all of these different things for you.
Yeah, that's where I was going to be crazy. But I love what you're basically saying, which is humans have human needs at the end of the day, and whatever way we're going to be interacting with them, even if it's AI-ified, it's going to be basic down to what the human needs in the first place, which is funny. I love this, man. And I'm really grateful I'm able to work with you guys. And I feel lucky because I get to see the back end of things. But this is awesome. Yeah. Before you go, I have the go.bureauventures, so BUROVENTURES.com. And I'll make sure I have the link in the show notes. And is the best way people can touch you through LinkedIn, or what do you prefer usually? Yeah,
best for me is probably LinkedIn. I get a lot through LinkedIn inbound, and my inbox is a bit spam, but I look at it, and I also have a guy in my team that is dedicated just to manage that inbox, so he pings me all the time if there's something that, let's say, doesn't fall into the mold of, hey, what is this, Harold? Maybe you should look at this. So LinkedIn is probably the best. The website of the company is a bit, let's say, obscure because we're doing so many different things. But yeah, LinkedIn is the best way to reach out.
Harold, I just want to say, as a user, not that right word, a member, whatever that is, member of the community, user of the tech, of whatever, I really appreciate you and enjoy it. And this has been a fascinating talk, which I know we can put a ton of stuff. I'll make sure I link a bunch of things in here so people can get it. You obviously give away a ton of value, so make sure people have access to that resource as well. I just want to tell you thank you. Appreciate you so much.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and we could probably go on for hours, but and I know that I'm talking a lot and going on tangent several times, but I hope people find it useful.
No, this is great. Hey, don't feel bad at all. This is exactly what I want out of you. So just want to say thank you.
My
Podcast with
pleasure.
Jonathan Moss and Coach K, where you get the latest with AI and GTM today. GTM AI podcast with Jonathan Moss and Coach K. Tune in now, don't delay. Catch the